Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tantra's Mantra, where we go behind and beyond the tech news headlines. I am your host, Prakash Sangam, founder and principal at Tantra Analyst. As many of you know, I have written many reviews, device reviews, phones, laptops, watch, and many other consumer electronics items. And this time it's about the latest Samsung phone, Z Fold Ultra or Z Fold 8 Ultra, I should say. When I actually started to write the review, then I thought maybe it's a good idea to, do this as a discussion with one of my fellow analysts rather than just write the simple review that I've been doing. And also, it makes more sense because foldables as a category have broken out, taking off, and becoming mainstream. I'm saying that because almost every major OEM, has multiple generations of foldables now, and the form factors themselves are evolving as well. It started with a simple book type of a foldable, going on to the flip kind of foldable, and now different kinds that Samsung introduced, and obviously Samsung is the pioneer of this category, and they are keeping the lead with different kinds of form factors and so on. So discuss all of that. I have with me my, as I said, fellow analyst Mark Vena. He is the CEO and principal analyst at SmartTech Research. Mark, welcome to the show.
Prakash, welcome. Thank you again for inviting me.
Yeah, sure. So Mark covers a lot of technologies and markets, including, of course, smartphones and consumer electronics. I run into him
a lot,
a lot, yeah, almost at almost at every either a customer event or industry event or a conference and so on. So I thought it's a good idea to bring him on and talk about this new phone and exchange some points that we have and exchange opinions more so. So I'll ask Mark to talk about his research areas and the channels where you can find his resources and research a little bit later. But let's get on with the discussion of talking about foldables.
Yes, no, that's great. And, Prakash, we were talking about before you hit the record button, I think we both believe that we're kind of in a seminal moment in the smartphone history, long history of innovations where, Samsung is really the grandfather or the father of foldable phones. They've been doing it for many years and not just getting into the category. Yeah. They're on the eighth iteration of foldable phones. And I think that now that if we all believe the rumors, Apple may be getting into the market. I think that's a pretty good bet.
Yeah.
Next month. And I really believe that we're getting to a point in time where people will start to seriously consider the advantages of foldable phones. So that's first and foremost kind of my high level 50,000 foot view that this is going to be a big deal. Now, price point factors into that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But from a design standpoint, especially with the 8, Samsung has come a long way. I mean, the phones don't feel like a science project anymore. I mean, I think the first 2 or 3 versions had crease issues. They got a lot of grief in the media. I mean, I don't have to tell you that the first 2 or 3 models were pretty challenging. There were people, breaking them in half because the hinge wasn't particularly strong. And if you look at the 8th iteration on the 2 models they announced versus the model they announced many years ago, the first one, it's night and day. It's a thinner phone. So when you fold it in half, from a volume size standpoint, it's not any larger than a traditional candy bar phone, like the Pro models that Apple sells or the larger models that Samsung sells under the Galaxy brand. And I think we're at this point right now, just at a macro level, that if you really want to get rid of a device, and that's the way I kind of tell people, and we'll get into this, how you can kind of cost justify this. When I travel, and Prakash, you do a lot of traveling yourself, I always drag along an iPad with me. And I'm always using the iPad really when I'm on the plane. I don't really use the iPad when I'm in my hotel room. I might be using my MacBook Pro or my laptop computer that I have, but I get to drag around another couple of pounds of hardware. And I think the nice thing that people will start to see is that, you know what? You don't have to bring along a big tablet on the plane with you, because that book form factor that it essentially opens up to, depending on which model you get, is terrific for watching content and watching video. So to me, that's the big deal. And I think the net really issue is that, and this particular model, by the way, is, I think, very, very impressive. I mean, it's very hard to detect the crease.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big deal. The other thing I think that is kind of interesting is that it will kind of make you rethink carrying cases, because obviously you have to get a new carrying case. Samsung was good enough to send me their carrying case. I'm sure they sent you a carrying case for you. And it's really one piece of plastic that essentially fits on the back model. But it's going to be very interesting. And I think from a hardware standpoint, it's a solid phone.
Yeah. So, and I think really the pivotal moment for foldables, in my view, was Fold 7. That's when it was, the title of my review was, if I remember correctly, it is the time where you don't have to make any compromises with foldables, right? So you get the best of both worlds in real terms. And Ultra 8 or 8 Ultra for Z Fold8 Ultra, to be specific, kind of, develops on that. I think it in my view, I know I've been using Fold since Fold 4, I think, and as a regular phone. Fold 7 was like cut above the rest, so no question about it. It was very pivotal. 8, I think, continues that legacy. I think the big advantage I've seen, I mean, it's no news for anybody who has checked it out, is basically, as some of the things you pointed out, crease is highly unnoticeable. And battery life, I think battery life, well, I don't know, we all have been using the regular S series phones that Samsung has. The big thing with S26 was that it was more of a habit changing. I did not have to charge that phone every day. Z Fold 7, still I had to charge it every day for the use case I have. I think I've seen with the Ultra 8 Ultra or Ultra 8, I Fold 8 Ultra. I don't have to charge it every day, every other day, depending on the usage. Maybe sometimes it goes 2 days if I'm not heavily using it. And then other aspect I've seen is the opening and closing. It's much more snappy now. And when you're opening 7, you almost not hear it, but you heard it in your in your head. It's creaking, right? Kind of thing. You're opening it.
I agree.
But this one, it's very snappy, and it also stops at different places. So that's one, I think, not tangible, but difference I've seen, which is, I don't know how to explain it, but it feels good opening it compared to.
I agree with you. From a durability standpoint, I think it's a more solid phone than the 7.
Correct.
The 7 was actually a pretty good phone.
Correct.
But,
Yeah,
but the 8, I think I agree with you. My observation has been, because, the first thing we do as analysts when we get this thing, we start playing with it. Because the only way you really can experience it, you got to carry it around with you. Now, I haven't switched it from my existing iPhone number, so I'm kind of walking around with 2 phones. Yeah. But a couple of observations. I think the battery life is good. I've been able to get away with, a day plus of battery life, which is great.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that was interesting to me is that when you're using, and this is for your general audience, not too many people realize that the big deal about a foldable phone is not just the fact that it opens up into a bigger display, it's that there's a third display on the front of the phone. Yeah. And that's going to introduce all kinds of interesting usage models, which I think Samsung has done a little bit of work with, which is kind of good. But that's what I'm excited about, waiting to see what Apple, has to say about just usage models about it. But back to Samsung, I mean, it's been a delightful phone to hold on to. The camera in that phone is a first-class camera. I mean, I think from a video spec standpoint, it did raise a bit. There are some questions we'll talk about in terms of the standard Z Fold 7. Yeah. Z Fold 8 has a camera. It's not a bad camera, but it's slightly underpowered in comparison to the 8, to the Ultra from a megapixel standpoint. I don't know whether everybody will get that, but the Ultra is more of a premium experience phone, whereas the standard Z Fold 8 is more of which has a different aspect ratio, I think women are going to prefer that model because women their hands tend to be a bit smaller and they can wrap their hands around that. But that phone is really designed for content creators. So it's kind of curious to me why Samsung, decided to give the camera a bit of a haircut, in that model. But nevertheless, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah. Cool. And also, I think the 8 Ultra is basically primarily targeted for that price point at enterprise and, premium like executives, premium customers like executives and such, right? At that price point. And I think I've been using, as I said, foldable for a long time. The value it brings in terms of multiple screens, multiple applications, the biggest impact of using foldable phone is on my laptop. I don't have to open it that much, so the battery life of the laptop is much longer, right? So, yeah. So, and in terms of foldable phones itself, I mean, what are some of the top use case and applications you use it for?
Well, what I'm using it, again, my brain, as we were talking about this before the call, my brain for 20 years has been kind of skewed toward how to use iOS. So it's a bit of a chore for me. And it's not the fault of Samsung. It's just the fact that Android and iOS are two fundamentally different operating systems with different GUIs. And as a result, you tend to, I know how to do this in iOS real quick. I had to kind of figure things out on an Android phone. But I've been using it for things like really multitasking, where if I'm looking at an email on one panel, like using Outlook or whatever app you're using, the other panel, I can see what my calendar looks like at the same time. Yeah. That's a big deal. The way most people use a smartphone is when, they get a text message, and since they only have a single view at that point in time, they have to kind of hop to another application. They're bouncing back and forth. A lot of that goes away, with that kind of application. The other thing that's kind of interesting is entertainment applications, because I live in Las Vegas, Prakash, as you know, and what I've been doing it a couple of times is that if I use the BetMGM app to place a bet on a game, not to say that I do that, I can use the MLB app to watch the game on the other panel at the same time. So I'm not hopping back and forth. So again, that may not be a widespread usage model, but the reality is it really is a very convenient thing, and having those.
Yeah, multiple screens. Yeah, there are many, in this one with the new software, you can also have pairs.
Yes.
So instead of open one and scramble to open other, I think it's another good case for you. When you're using the betting app, you always have to look at MLB. So you can actually pair those together and store it as a pair. So anytime you open one, it opens that unfolded screen. It opens both of them. That kind of saves the hassle for you. So, and I mean, ultimately, I've been looking at a lot of presentations, not so much creating, but presentations, spreadsheets, looking at reports. We are always on the move, as you said, on travel. Phone sometimes becomes too small a screen for you to really have a focused reading and such. I use it.
That's a great usage model that I wish a few weeks ago I do presentations at a conference in San Jose, and I'm on stage. And people have been in these conferences. They typically put a monitor in front of the stage so you can see the slide. Well, guess what? The monitor wasn't working, so I kept turning around to look at the slide to see whether on the right slide or not. Yeah. Had I had my foldable in front of me, I could have seen the slide and my speaking points at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I mean, it opens up all kinds of interesting usage models. And Samsung, you got to give them credit. They've been working very closely with Google to implement some of those usage models.
Yeah. It's the use case initially, that's one of my pet peeve with foldables as well. I mean, from an OS and applications and experience point of view, it was larger screen, but the user experience was pretty similar. Like the use cases, the settings and the applications I said, where you can pair 2 or 3 screens and such. Those are the things that Samsung has been working with Google, with application providers and so on to enhance. And I'm sure it'll be even more as the usage grows, right? So, okay, quickly moving on to the regular Fold 8. It's the first time that they've introduced this new form factor. And in my view, it basically indicates 2 things. One, they're getting confident with where they are on the foldables as a category and foldable screen, the mechanism and such. And so they are expanding the reach and also kind of preempting what Apple might be doing as well, right?
Right. Yes.
and and I mean, given a choice, I would still go for Ultra because my primary use case is enterprise related or
Yes.
productivity use case. But if somebody is on more on a content consumption side, even to some extent creator side, then they might opt for it, and it's a little bit
Well, you
cheaper
see,
as
well,
well.
and the point that I would challenge you on that is, I'm an old marketeer. And
Uh-huh.
to me, I mean, these are both models are premium phones. I mean,
Yeah.
the Ultra is, I think, $2,100 if I'm not mistaken, and I
Yeah.
think
That's
there's
right.
only a
Yeah.
$200 gap, or
Yeah.
$300 or $200 gap for the standard Z Fold8. Classic marketing. If you want someone to buy the most expensive thing, but it's two different models, you don't want to force the customer to say, I got to make a choice now. Do I want the better camera? Do I want I mean, there's not many differences other than the orientation of the phone and the camera between those two models. So again, I'm not sure Samsung made the right decision there. If I had been the head of their marketing, and I'm clearly not, I probably would have put the same camera in both models, so that removes that friction, that reason for not selecting the more expensive model. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if Apple does the same thing.
Yeah.
If Apple comes out with two models, will they force an Apple customer to make a choice between camera capability?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way I think the way I am approaching that decision again as a productivity user is, what is my primary use case? Is it
Yes.
watching content? I mean, I do watch a lot of content on it, but is that my primary reason for spending close to $2,000 on it if I'm buying one? Then I think I would decide based on my primary use case and then use it. Since for me, it's productivity, not so much content. And another important thing, if you used it, right, since the length is smaller, when unfolded, the keyboard almost takes half the screen, which means the usable screen on a regular 8 is very limited when it's unfolded if
Yes.
you're trying to type something or such. So it is definitely not the most ideal phone for productivity use cases, in my view, which means if you're looking for productivity, there is no way you would use Fold 8, regular Fold 8, in my view. You would definitely go to Ultra. If you are primarily looking at content creation and generation, then you might, then camera might be a challenge, as you mentioned, right? So
And I
yeah,
want to be very clear, like I said
yeah,
before, the camera in the Z Fold8 is
it's
not a
good.
bad camera. It's
Yeah,
not like
it is good. Yeah, yeah,
it's a very, very, very strong camera. In fact, last year it would have been a premium camera, from a
yeah,
capability standpoint.
yeah,
But one other factor, Prakash, that's really important is that, and I bet you've experienced this as well, because remember, foldable phones only have about 3% of the market. It's not
yeah. Correct.
it's not a very common item when you go out to a restaurant, into a bar, and you're looking at what phones people are using, or if you're on a plane.
Yeah,
When I'm on a plane, I'm always looking at what kind of phones people have. You
yeah,
don't really see it that often.
yeah,
However, I do think women are going to prefer that smaller that Z Fold 8, because I think there's a woman who will go unidentified, because she's a friend of mine, who said it passes the back pocket pass. I could put that in my back pocket in my jeans, and it
I see.
doesn't feel terribly. It doesn't stick, out of my pocket. So
Yeah,
we'll see if
yeah.
that becomes a factor.
Okay. I mean, other option they would have had is maybe put the same camera and same camera as Ultra instead of tiering them. Now they are like a regular Ultra and a regular Fold 8 and 8 Ultra, which means they have to have a price difference, right?
Yes.
Maybe they would have put in same camera, everything same, but maybe call it 8W or something like that for wide form factor. That's another choice they had, but I'm assuming they looked at the numbers, and probably I think at least my vantage point for that price point, the market for consumer, content consumption is smaller than the productivity. We'll see. I don't have the hard numbers, but that's my gut feeling anyway. Okay, so then there was a flip as well that was announced. which I think, continuing on the legacy of the previous flip. I'm not a big user of it, but that is, to your point of, ladies using it. I have seen, and I think there are numbers out there as well saying women really like a
Yes.
flip, right? So because it fits their purse and other things, it feels like another accessory they have in their bag, like the lipstick and other things.
No,
So yeah,
I agree with you, and
yeah,
I really should have included that as part of the
yeah.
choice. Because, but you got to give
Samsung.
Samsung credit because they really
Yeah,
did storm on the scene. That they're giving people choice. You've
yeah,
got that
well,
flip
yeah,
design,
correct.
and I think this is a sign now that foldable technology is pretty mature. It will only get better from that. I mean, remember, here's the ironic part:
Yeah,
Apple is sourcing their display technology from
correct.
Samsung. You
So
know,
so yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
the point I'm making is I think, when Apple comes out, Apple rhetoric will be, oh, this is the greatest foldable smartphone of all time. They'll pretend that that Samsung didn't even announce a foldable
yeah,
phone.
of
That's
course.
what Apple likes to
That's
do. But the reality is, I think your point is spot on, is that foldable technology now has gotten to a maturity point now that you can start to experiment with a lot
yeah,
of different form factors. And it may
correct.
not stop here. There might be up
Yeah, yeah,
to,
sure.
there could be other form factors that you
Yeah,
see
I mean,
surface.
there's like Trifor that are working on, right? I mean, that in my view will replace laptop, right? If I'm traveling for 1 day or 2 day, usually I'm in San Diego. I fly to Bay Area quite often for events. I fly out in the morning, come back in the night. In that case, I would not even carry my laptop. The tripod would be, maybe I'll have a small wireless keyboard in my backpack if I have to use
I
it.
think that's bingo. I
Yeah,
mean, in a
yeah,
pinch,
yeah,
for you, and listen, we all go to these trade shows. We're dragging
yeah,
around,
yeah,
bags, and all our gear is inside of it. And
yeah,
I got to tell you, for those quick jaunts where we're just going over, overnight trips, or just, what I frequently do, you probably do the same thing.
yeah,
Very often, I don't even stay overnight. If I have a
yeah,
meeting in San Francisco or San Jose, I'll take
yeah,
the first flight out of Las Vegas in the morning. I go to the
yeah.
meeting,
Same here.
I get a taxi, and
Come
I
back.
take a plane
Yeah,
back. And I love the idea of having just that one form factor and having, I could probably, there are a lot of great Bluetooth keyboards
yeah,
that
yeah,
that are very small that you could use.
yeah, yeah. So, okay. So now the big questions that you teed up, Apple coming up with its own foldable. In my view, I think it's only good for the industry. I mean, Apple comes with a lot of recognition. If they are adopting, then usually it says that the technology is mature, the form factor is mature, and it will bring huge amount of marketing, even app ecosystem, maybe a little bit of innovation on those experiences as well. So I think overall it will be net positive for
I think
all the
absolutely. I
OEMs
think it'll
who
be
already
very,
have
very positive.
foldables,
No,
right?
I
Yeah,
agree with you,
yeah,
Prakash. I mean, my point of view is that this falls under the category of a rising tide affects all boats, that kind of
yeah,
thing. I
yeah,
think secretly in the bowels of the offices at Samsung, they're all secretly praying that Apple. Well, first of all, they know because they're supplying displays. But number two is they want Apple to be successful because they know
yeah,
that Apple will validate the category.
yeah, exactly.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
here's the ironic part, because we've done SmartTech research has done some primary research on this.
uh,
Since the Apple brand is a premium brand, there's no company that sells more premium smartphones than Apple,
yeah,
where Samsung is kind of the reverse, not totally the reverse, but a lot of their volume tends to be at the mid-range or at the lower part of the market, really most of the mid-range from a price point standpoint. But Apple, given their brand reputation and given their brand appeal, the research that we've done
mm,
is that the people that they'll expand the market. There's no question about that.
yeah,
But people who would have bought an iPhone Pro 18 Max
yeah,
will probably step up and buy
yeah,
an Apple Ultra. So, and that doesn't happen in marketing. I mean, generally when you cannibalize a category, you
yeah,
may sell more, but the ASP is a lower price. And in Apple's case, if our research is correct, their ASPs will go up, and obviously their gross profit will go up, and their mix will go up. Again, that's what our research suggests. But
yeah,
I do think your point, I think, is spot on. I think Samsung will start to sell more, whether it's Flip, whether it's Ultra, whether it's the standard Z Fold8, purely because Apple has validated the category.
yeah. On the Apple foldable side, I think my question would be, we look at the numbers. How much, if it's foldable, it's kind of a replacement for tablet, especially iPad Mini. How will that affect their
Prakash,
tablet? Will that
Prakash,
cannibalize it? Yeah,
you're a smart
yeah,
man, because I think where this is going to hurt Apple, if it does hurt Apple, it
yeah,
kind of dilutes the reason to have an iPad Mini. An
yeah.
iPad Mini is pretty close to the size of a
Correct. Yeah.
so
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 it'll
Apple
cannibalize
might
that.
lose
So
that volume, but they're not doing a tremendous amount of volume with the iPad
correct.
Mini. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's probably going to be a net gain for Apple.
yeah. Maybe that's the reason. It's since it's not a major revenue earner for them. Maybe that's the reason they're ready to take the risk, even if the new phone cannibalizes, and probably the profit margin will be more net positive for them as well if that happens. And that's discussion for another day when they announce. Okay, right? Okay. So big question. Do you recommend people buying Z Fold 8 Ultra? If so, for what kind of users? And of course, that takes into consideration the price point. When it's not a new price point, foldables have been around 2000 ever since they introduced, so it's nothing new as such. But that is a main factor when people buy stuff, right? So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my particular view is that I think your rationale at the beginning of the call, I think, was really what I would focus on. If you really appreciate the usage models that a foldable phone brings to the market, the Z Fold Ultra, the Z Fold 8, it's a very fine product. I can't find any reason not to buy it from a hardware standpoint. Now, it is pricey. You're going to spend a couple $1,000s or more. It will be interesting to see whether there are some additional deals that carriers provide to see if they can offset that price. I mean, one of the things that Apple did a couple of weeks ago, they announced a leasing program.
Yeah.
Very coyly before their big announcement next month. And I have a reason why they announced a leasing program. They know that their new phones are going to be very expensive, and they want to come out with a low cost way someone can get into a foldable phone without spending $500 a month. That's an exaggeration. A very high monthly payment. But I like the Z Fold 8. I recommend the hardware. I think you have to look at the usage models. If you see the usage models, hey, you know what? That could really, make me a much more productive person. No reason to do that. No reason not to go out and buy one if you can afford it. I might, if I was on the edge of making a decision, I probably would wait to see what Apple does. If you think you might switch from an ecosystem standpoint, the one thing that Samsung has done a very nice job of, by the way, which we should reference. It used to be a bit of a beast to go from an Android phone to an iPhone and vice versa. It's actually, I think it's actually easier. Samsung's done a nicer job that if I have an iPhone, they have apps that allow you to transfer the data and content very easily to your new Samsung, which makes that decision to move out of the Apple ecosystem a lot easier than it was just a few years ago. Apple does a nice job if you have an existing iPhone, but they don't typically care, frankly. Now there are third-party apps you can get and those kind of things. But to answer your question, I think they're fine phones.
Cool. Yeah. So my point of view is, in my view, Z Fold 7 was a pivotal moment. I mean, if you missed getting, if you want to get into foldables and in the Android ecosystem, if you missed getting Fold 7, you should definitely get Fold 8 Ultra. And if you already have a Fold 7, I mean, you should look at if there are good, good options that carriers have in terms of trading and so on.
Yes,
I think it has good benefits over Fold 7, mainly battery life. Fold 7 is a single day battery life, more than a single day. This Fold 8 can go 2 days depending on the use case, and it mostly on how much large screen you use. So again, upgrading from Fold 7 to 8, there's not a lot of reasons for it, but if at all, battery life is a major reason for you to upgrade from 7 to 8. And the less visible crease and other things are additional benefit.
Yes.
So
no, I think if you're a road warrior, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been saying from day one, at that price point, for those use cases, I think it is an executive phone for road warriors, anybody who needs to access lots of data when they are on the go and they don't want to open their laptop and so on. So I think that still holds good. It's a great productivity device for anybody who is on the go and who can afford. And a lot of times the company is paying for it. So it's definitely a buy for them. The Z Fold 8, the regular phone for content consumption, I think the jury is still out. I have not used it much because I'm not a huge content consumer as such. But whether it can replace, looking at the price point, you buy a new phone and a tablet and carry around, and instead you do this for your content creation. Maybe a good reason there. Probably price wise, it ends up at the same point, but you have one device. But 8 Ultra, Fold 8 Ultra, I think it's definite, you know, productive tool for the folks who are on the go.
I agree with that assessment. Great.
All right. So, yeah, thank you very much, Mark. So, time for our audience to know where they can get your research.
Yeah, they said that they can reach me at my website, www.smarttechresearch.net, or on, you can find me on LinkedIn. The last name is Vina, B-E-N-A, Mark Vina. Or actually, what I love people to do is subscribe to my podcast, which is the SmartTech Check podcast on YouTube. Got 40,000 subscribers, and there's all kinds of ways you can reach me. So, and by the way, that research that I referenced on foldable phones is on the homepage of my website. So please, and it's free. Please log on, and I'm happy to allow you to download that report.
Very well, and I highly recommend you guys to check out all of Mark's great work.
Thank you.
Right, so Mark, thanks again for coming over to the show. It was an exciting discussion.
I enjoyed it, Prakash.
And we both are looking forward to the foldables journey that the industry will be on for some time.
Great. Well, thank you again.
So, folks, that's all we have for now. Hope you found this discussion informative and useful. If so, please hit like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are listening this on. I'll be back soon with another episode, putting light on another interesting tech subject. Bye for now.